WNST and Baltimore Positive. We are keeping calm. We are staying local, and we are always Baltimore Positive. Don Moeller joining us here for another extended conversation. You know, Don, we have so many great alumni, and this is such an incredible time to reach to folks when we're all a little captive. We're all looking for a little inspirational education about things going on. Reverend Al Hathaway was our guest for 3 pretty significant episodes over at Jennings Cafe. You can find those up at Baltimore Positive. Don, I know you want to talk about the sponsors, talk about the community. I know we're going to have Johnny O on. We've talked health and human services, but it's always great to check in on the community and everything that's going on.
Absolutely, and we start by thanking our sponsors. They make all of this possible, and as we say, some of our sponsors are really hurting right now. So if you get a chance, get by State Fair in Catonsville, order some carryout. They do brunch, lunch, dinner. They'll meet you at the curbside if you like, but give Evan and give Keith a call. They'd be glad to bring the food right to your car. Our friends at Fadley's, unfortunately, Lexington Market is shut down. We'll actually talk with the Reverend about the whole issue of food security, which is so darn important. But the good news is our friends at Fadley's, Damie Hahn and Bill and Nancy, are still shipping those great crab cakes near and far. So jump on the website, Fadley's website, hit shop, and you can go ahead and order your crab cakes. They'll be out before you know it. And we thank our latest sponsors who are still working at real estate throughout this. So Moeller and Gary Realty and Jeff Moeller at 410-746-1547. So our sponsors are working hard. And if we ever needed spiritual intervention more than ever, it's this time. So Reverend Al Hathaway, welcome back to Baltimore Positive.
Oh, it's great to be back, and it's great to be positive even in the midst of this uncertainty. We still have to keep our faith. We still have to keep our love, and we still have to keep our sense of hope.
Well, you know, Rev, I saw you a couple weeks ago at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes night, and a bunch of Baltimore Positives. Sonia Santelises was there, and Frank Kelly, and some other great folks, Ed Reed. Little did we know that would be toward the end of social gatherings, and you know, running a ministry, right, running a church, running any congregation of any kind of people at this point, we have now moved to this way, right? We're video, we're audio, we're all trying to stay in this together for folks on big issues, obviously, in West Baltimore that were there before the coronavirus, there before we all had to stay in. Tell me what you're feeling and seeing in the community from what your congregation and not being able to gather on a Sunday in a traditional way.
Well, you know, it's amazing. I would say a couple of things. One is that I recognize we have what we call church on the phone. We have Facebook Live. We have Zoom. So we have these technological ways to connect members of our congregation. But what's been interesting, and I just learned this, is that our older members of the congregation basically grew up in the era of the telephone. So they love the fact that they're able to join together in that way. Now, my younger members, they like Facebook Live and they like Zoom as their way. So this is becoming an intergenerational way to connect the members of my congregation. And I imagine that's what's happening throughout the country.
What are you hearing from your congregation, Reverend? We're going to talk later in this discussion about Act Now, such an exciting venture that you're involved in. But you're out and about as much as anyone I know. What are you hearing from the folks you talk to about where they are? Where's their mindset right now in terms of where we are as a city, where we are as a nation?
You know, it's interesting when you think about the fact that I serve in West Baltimore. It's an area that has healthcare disparities. You're talking about differences in mortality rates being 20 years different between West Baltimore and Roland Park. When you think about food deserts, when you think about all of the issues that impact our society, this has heightened those issues. I believe it was Malcolm X once said, when America sneezes, the African-American community gets a cold. And in this instance, that's really what is happening. Those disparities are being highlighted. The amazing thing is that I'm finding the community looking to pull together. I had one person call me up, a company called me up. They said, Reverend Al, what can we do? We have 7 pallets of food. And I said, my goodness. I said, we are serving the young people, the children who attend our Head Start program. We got pop-up meals for them. But this far exceeded our capacity, and we were able to direct them to other entities that were distributing food in the community. I'm finding a spirit of generosity, which is amazing. I hope we can understand that that is a value in our community, generosity. The other thing I would say to you is that my older members of our congregation have a fear that they won't be able to get their medicine. And so we've organized a St. Luke's ministry that they just simply call the church. They let us know, and we'll make those, go to the stores for them.
Reverend, what number? I'm going to stop you there real quick for a second. That sounds so important to me. St. Luke's ministry, if folks are worried about their medication, they can call your church and someone will go get it. What number would they call to have access that service?
They would call 410-523-6880. 410-523-6880.
Wow. That's something we certainly need to promote because, Reverend, I think you tap right into it when you talk about, I think people suddenly feel how fragile they are, right? And
yes, yes.
We feel like a speck in this universe.
Go ahead.
But we have to realize there's a natural reaction to trauma. The natural reaction to trauma is fear. It is that I'm going to run or flight or I'm going to fight. But what we're trying to say is that when you have trauma in a faith context, you're supposed to now, that's when your faith is supposed to grow. That's when you're understanding that there is a divine that is in charge of it all. And so what we're trying to demonstrate, really what I'm saying is walk around gospel. How do we now in this era where people feel traumatized, how do we demonstrate that our faith is real?
Reverend Al Hathaway joining us here, Union Baptist Church, a servant church. You can find him. He's always around town. You're such an outgoing guy. You're always in rooms full of people. Every time I'm in a room with you, there's always people around. This is a real challenge for extroverted people and people who have spent their whole lives, whether it's Don as a school teacher and an educator and being with kids in schools and running the government and me being on the radio and wanting to go out and do live events and touching people. This is an experiment for all of us and certainly for our minds to control, where our thoughts go, our energy flows, right?
Oh, yes, it is. And in this season, in the Christian context, we're moving towards Good Friday, Palm Sunday, Easter Sunday. This is a high time within the Christian community. But one of the things that we have to realize is that prior to the movement of going to Good Friday and Palm Sunday, you find that the Christ in our understanding took time to reflect. And so really in that context, I'm finding this as a time to be still and know that I am God, the time for us to reflect, the time to do more reading, the time to do more writing, the time to really have an introspective look at who you are and whose you are. That's what's happening personally for me.
Boy, Nestor, you can react to that a little bit, Nestor. We don't normally interview each other and ask each other to jump in on those kinds of topics. But when Reverend Hathaway talked about what he's doing in terms of the introspection and the writing and the thinking, I mean, I saw your picture come up. I mean, you've talked to me so much in the last week or two about that. Maybe you can reflect with the Reverend what that's meant to you.
Well, I think there are times in our life, and I'll be 52 later this year, Rev, and I've had a couple of opportunities in my life to take a time out. I mean,
he's a baby, isn't he, Rev?
Yeah. But I think obviously 9/11 would be a timeout. I think when you change a job, when you create a family member, when you take a wife. I mean, all these times in your life that you stop and you say, all right, where am I? What am I doing? And what's over that hill that I can't see and down around the corner? And there is a point now where everyone is taking time. I remember I was upset that the Pearl Jam tour got canceled 2 weeks ago. We were upset when they canceled basketball games or took lacrosse away. Now we're just at where can we get our food? And I think it certainly humanizes all of us to realize there are a lot of people out there that deal with that challenge every day of their life. And how do I stay safe? And how do I stay alive today? And how do I stay healthy today? And am I going to make it to tomorrow? And what can I do today to make it to tomorrow? And we talk about food, and we had an incredible conversation earlier this week with Tim Bojanowski and I from Zest Media. I encourage everyone to go out to WNST.net, our audio vault, obviously Baltimore Positive also. And Don, you invited Tim on, and we talked so much about how much food there is in the universe being made to feed people. And now those portals, whether they're restaurants, cafeterias, schools, places where people congregate in any way to eat food, those places aren't there, but those people need to eat. And supermarkets, as we've seen, it's really been troublesome. Rev, you said pop-up meals, pop-up food, the 7 pallets you talked about. If we get further into this, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks down the line, into the summer, the weather's going to change, and people need food, and let's just say we already had food deserts and, just 3-4 miles away from where I am where people can't bring food back. What can be done for local grows and local people? Rev, I get my food down at the farmer's market. Every year, 30 weeks in a row, we start going to the farmer's market. We see people. That's not going to be there. That's not where we're going to get our food. People are going to get food from different places the next few weeks.
It's amazing. I have to reflect on the fact that in the line of ministry at Union Baptist Church, I followed the Reverend Vernon Dobson, who was an amazing personality in the city of Baltimore. He and Reverend Marion Bascom at the time that was serving at Douglas Memorial, they were one of the initiators of the Maryland Food Bank. Almost now, 40 years ago. They understood that we need to have an alternative system of providing food directly to people in the community. I think now we have to use our thinking power to say, how do we build upon what the food bank is doing? And then how do we become more strategic in creating fresh food places within the community? How do we do that? And I think one of the things that I'm finding is that I'm seeing people develop delivery services of meals. I'm seeing commercial facilities now saying, hey, you have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm finding even there's a push from government that's saying to the traditional corner market, you've got to change your menu. And I think what we're going to learn from this is that these places that are in our neighborhoods are going to really have to serve our community over against seeing themselves as exploiting the community through overcharging prices for goods and services.
Let's talk about Act Now a little bit, Rev. Don sent it over to me, and tell everyone the elevator speech for what you're doing and really what can be done during this pandemic, because so many movements, so many good things going on have slowed down in the last 10 days, 2 weeks, because they've had to, because people can't get out of their homes.
That's true, yes. Really, in January of the year, I realized that how do you engage people who feel as though the electoral process is not serving them? They don't believe anymore or trust in government. They feel that the political class and political people are just self-serving. And so we created what we call Act Now Baltimore, actnowbaltimore.com. Accountability, credibility, transparency in government. And I was able to send out surveyors to begin to talk directly to people in all of the city councilmatic districts in the city. I've talked right now to over 7,500 people and asked them just some simple questions. One, do you believe that we could do a better job of keeping our city clean and improving infrastructure? And amazingly, 91% of the people said yes. When you start asking real questions, do you believe elected officials should be required to be 100% transparent and accountable? 90% said yes. When you just ask these basic questions of people, you found that 1, they wanted to be asked, 2, they wanted to be engaged, and 3, they didn't want to have a sense of apathy. What can we do? But what happens in our system now is that when we find a period of electoral politics, the political people go out and basically try to have people adopt their positions. But nobody wants to listen to what are the positions of the people. That's what Act Now is all about. It's listening to the people.
So Reverend, let's talk a little bit about it. I'm a proud member. And Esther, I'm assuming you've signed up to be a part of this movement. Act Now, accountability, credibility, transparency. Now, when I look at what you publish under accountability, we need a leader that's accountable to the citizens of Baltimore, who's going to fight crime in the city, make our city safer, improve our schools, and improve the quality of life for our residents. Nestor, does that sound like something you've said before once or twice?
Well, I mean, these feel like really basic fundamental things. I mean, we founded Baltimore Positive. I'm wearing a sweatshirt. You're wearing a hat, Don. I can see you haven't shaved in a couple days like me. And, all of this was really about displeasure, right? I mean, I'm a city resident. I live at the harbor. It began with me with not being able to sell my property and thinking who would ever buy my property and who's going to be the next person that lives here and how can we make the neighborhood better? And then reaching out to people all throughout the communities we've been doing for a year and a half about these issues. Rev, we got this election now moved because of this. I mean, all the tectonic plates underneath the city are moving right now because of this coronavirus. We're on the front end of this over at Johns Hopkins. Don's been quoting all the Johns. I mean, Baltimore's about to shake. We need to make sure it's going in the right direction. Some thoughts about the election moving and maybe, what that means as far as ACT and as far as people getting involved in this election and how important it is.
I felt it was very. I really commend the governor for realizing that you didn't need to kind of shove an election down the throats of people in a time of uncertainty. And so I applaud the fact that he moved the election until June. I think that was wise. But what it's allowed this to happen is that it's allowed people now to really look clearly at leadership. One of the things that's been asking, hey, would you just simply show us your income tax? We've had a problem previously with a mayor that had some difficulties with their income tax statements. You had a problem with a police commissioner that had difficulties. So, hey, one way to make certain that people are transparent is show us that. Show us those kinds of things that says that you are being faithful and true to your obligations to the federal government. And it's amazing how we found that people who are in the elected process, who putting themselves up for candidacy, have not been as transparent in that area as possible. Seems like a simple thing. The other thing that I'm finding that people are saying to me is that we need a new direction. We need new leadership. So I'm saying to the candidates when they come and ask me a question, I said, what you going to do new? Don't tell me what you did in the past. Don't tell me because the whole paradigm, the whole community, the whole shift has changed. So you can't go back and say, I did that then, because everything's have changed. You got to say what you're doing now. And I'm finding that some of the candidates aren't able to meet that standard. They're talking a continuation of what it's been. And clearly what I'm seeing among people is that they want new. They want new leadership, new direction. They want a new Baltimore.
Well, Reverend Hathaway, and again, we're talking with Reverend Al Hathaway, Union Baptist Church, one of the real powerful faith leaders and civic leaders in the city of Baltimore, someone who truly believes and cares deeply about Baltimore City. Reverend, it's interesting when you talk, and I picked up as well from the Act Now website, this focus on there was a desire for new leadership. So I'm guessing, and I'm going to pose this as a question for you, I'm guessing then the fact that two of the top-tier candidates now, and it appears by, we've now had 3, 4, 5 polls, it appears that there are 5 or 6 people that can win this thing, that it's going to be pretty close. It's going to be a close election. And yet, two of the people that are now appearing to be trending toward the top of the list in T.J. Smith and Mary Miller have never run for public office before. What I hear you saying is, given that you've been talking to people on the street, that doesn't necessarily surprise you.
No. This is what I asked this question: is it time for a non-politician to lead the city? And I have 70% of the people saying yes.
Wow.
So you talk about there's this sense that the old political class, the tried and true political personalities have led us into where we are now, and they're saying we need to go in a different direction. I think what's going to happen is that if everything goes well, I'm doing a heavy social media campaign with Act now. By the time I hit to April, surely in May, I'll have 20,000 people connected to Act Now Baltimore.
Wow.
I believe it's going to be a tipping point in this election.
Well, you let us know whatever we can do to help you. Anything that lifts this city, we're about. Before we leave you, and anybody.
And I have another question when you're done too.
No problem. And before we leave, I want to let everybody know you're back in the episodes 54, 55, 56. If anybody wants to go back and just take a deep dive on who Reverend Al Hathaway, Dr. Hathaway is, and what Union Baptist is, and all the history and Elijah and all that good stuff is there. But Don kept saying the words leader and leader and leader. And I think this is a time, whether you're looking for a spiritual leader, an elected leader, a leader in your company, a leader in your family, a leader in your community, whatever it is, your neighborhood, leadership is everything right now. And I think we see it on television, whether it's Cuomo, whether it's Newsom, whether it's Larry Hogan. And in some cases, the President of the United States has not shown the kind of leadership that I would like and Don would like as well. But leadership right now, that who you follow, who you trust, and I know so much of ACT is talking about trust and trusting the police and trusting elected official when they get up in front of a podium that they're not leading you into harm's way. And I think there's going to be a lot of that right now. The question I would have for you as a leader of a church and a leader of 20,000 people with ACT, when people are not educated about this, and I've talked about this a lot. My wife was diagnosed 6 years ago last week with leukemia, and I've talked about it a lot this week because I had to really put my head about what I understood about bacteria, virus, immune systems, cancer itself. I wore gloves. I wore a rubber bodysuit for several days. She spent 155 nights in the hospital. If I contracted a virus, I would have killed her. And viruses are so hard to understand because, Rev, I'm 52 and I don't really understand it. I just respect it enough to know, and I think everybody who's watched TV talking about surfaces and masks and gloves. This is a really difficult thing for a lot of people who didn't stay all the way through 10th grade science like me or biology to really understand how powerful this is. And we see these images from Italy and China and all over the world. Leadership and who we trust. It's so important.
One of the things that's clear about leadership, and it's almost biblical, is he who would be the greatest will be your servant. So when you think about persons like Dr. Fauci, who has emerged on the scene, clearly he is not self-serving. He is seeking to give the best information to serve people by his intelligence and his integrity. What people want to see is, will you serve me with intelligence and integrity? One of the challenges that I think that many of the political leadership think is that they say, I too much. I'm doing this, and not we. And people want to hear, are you really embedded in understanding my needs, my tastes, and concerns? When they see that as leadership, when you're embedded in people's needs and concerns and hopes and dreams.
Intelligence and integrity. You can never go wrong by focusing on those two attributes. And the whole concept, Reverend, I agree, of servant leadership, I think it's what you see people truly rally around at these times. A couple of quick clarifications before we let you get back to work. You talked about ACT Now, probably by late spring will be up to around 20,000. That will make it one of the most powerful community voices in the entire city, if not the entire state. Will ACT Now endorse a candidate, or will ACT Now simply advocate for the characteristics of a candidate?
ACT Now will not endorse a candidate. It will endorse an agenda. And one of the things that we want to make certain that everyone has, whoever may win, we're going to demand a seat at the table. We're going to be very vigilant, and we're going to be very critical, and we're going to ensure that government works on behalf of people.
That's a beautiful thought, especially at this time. And I think we should leave it right there. I think you should drop the mic.
hey, I know you want to drop the mic, but I got to get one.
Go ahead. I thought you had it in. Go ahead.
I did. I got one more.
That's what happens when we work remote, Rev. I can't look at him. He can't look. We can't communicate.
We apologize to our listeners. Before we let Reverend Al Hathaway get out of here, you have a couple of development projects that have been near and dear to your heart. And I wonder if you could just update our listeners as to what those projects are and where they are at the current time.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Thank you. People sometimes realize is that one thing is to advocate. It's another thing to practice what you preach. And so in my community, there's been a building. It's called PS 103. It is the school named after Henry Highland Garnett. It's the elementary school that Justice Thurgood Marshall attended. We were awarded that school to redevelop it. And we're going to do some amazing things within that facility.
Where's that? Where is that located exactly on corner? I'll look it up.
It's located at 1315 Division Street. If you remember, I was born in the 1200 block of Drill Avenue, so it's really right around the corner from where I was born. And it was always a central, pivotal facility in our community in West Baltimore. And we were able to renovate that. We're going to bring amazing services to it. I tell you one thing that I want your listeners to understand. I grew up, and as you know, I was very good friends with Elijah Cummings. His campaign donated to us all of his election materials. So we're going to have voter registration where you will go in and actually see a reenactment and a redevelopment of his campaign office, his campaign literature. We have loops of his tapes from his speeches. They will be looped in that as well. It's going to be an interactive and a dynamic facility.
Inspiring speeches, right? I mean, you go in there, there's no way you're not going to get inspired.
Yes, that's our goal, as well as we got Judge Alexander Williams. He's bringing his law clinic there. We're going to have a violence intervention, gun violence intervention that was modeled at shock trauma. That's going to be there. We're going to have Promise Heights, which works in the 5 schools in that community. Their office will be there. It will be an amazing community center that will serve the community. And I got to commend the Maryland State Legislature. You know, they had an early sine die, but they were able to deliver some grants that we will be able to access that will help us in redeveloping this property.
Well, fantastic. Well, Reverend, next time we have you back, I'd also like to talk in more detail, if we can, about all of your efforts to talk about brain research with the African American community, because I know that's near and dear to your heart.
Let me give a shout out to the governor. The governor placed in his budget $1.25 million to advance that research, and I do commend Governor Hogan for doing that.
Beautiful.
Well, Nestor, when we come back, let's have the Reverend back on. Let's really dive into that, because I think that's an important topic that our listeners would like to hear about. So, Nestor, unless you have anything else, take us out of here.
Well, I'll tell you what, big thanks to State Fair. Go get some carry-out. Go get some curbside over there. Our friends at Fadley's, you can still order those delicious crab cakes, have them shipped to your house, enjoy them with your family while you're locked in. Reverend Al Hathaway, you can find him at Union Baptist. You can find him also at ActNowBaltimore.com. Make sure you sign the petition. I signed the petition, Rev. You'll be proud of me before it's all over. How about that, all right?
I am proud of you, and I'm proud of both of you as well. God bless you. Be safe.
Help fight crime, make our city safe for its residents, improve the city schools to help prepare our young people for the future, clean up our city, improve the quality of life for our residents. I'll sign that one twice. My wife's going to sign that one too. Make sure you're helping out in everything that we're doing. We are WNST.net. Keep calm, stay local, and remain Baltimore positive.